Hello, Brabs. We're back with more grandmother's stories. Stories of Emily Ward, sister of Eberbrock Ward, as recounted by her not stepchild, but adopted child. I think she was a niece, a biological niece of her two sisters. One of her two sisters, Sally or Abba, who died rather young. Going after strawberries. One day in June, as soon as dinner was over, Sally and a younger woman who worked for Uncle Sam and Uncle Sam's little boy and I went over to the Canada side of St. Clair River to gather wild strawberries that grew there in great abundance. We crossed the river in a rowboat, and when we got on shore, we pulled the boat high up on the beach so that the waves would not carry it off. We had a gay time filling our pails and baskets with the ripe fruit. When we got through, we were rather tired and very leisurely took our way to the boat. We did not notice that the small boy had gone ahead of us. When we were almost to the beach, he came running back to us shouting, "Bodie, Bodie!" I knew in a moment that he had done some mischief, and I set my strawberries down and ran as hard as I could toward the river. Sure enough, he had pushed the boat into the water, and she was floating off with the current. I waded out clear up to my neck, but I could not reach her, and as I could not swim, I had to wade back. By this time, the girls and the small boy were on the shore, and as I came back, they set up a dismal wail, for the boat was gone, and here we four were miles away from any habitation, and with a fine prospect of spending the night in the woods, where the wolves and bears still roamed and occasionally Indians were seen. We sat in a very melancholy plight, the girls crying, the boy looking doleful, and I thinking of what we should do. There was an island about a mile below, near the Canada shore, and I thought the current would carry the boat to that island and strand her on its northeastern point. But how to get to that point was the question. I looked around the beach and found there was driftwood of logs and some long poles that pioneers use in building and chimneys. I thought that with these we could make a raft if we only had something to tie them together with, but there wasn't a string a yard long, except those we used to hold up our stockings with, as was the fashion in those days. But strings or no strings, that raft had got to be made, and what were sunbonnets and aprons and dresses and skirts for if in an emergency they wouldn't tie a raft together? I told the girls my plan, and they said they didn't believe I ever would get that boat again in any such manner. But they went to work with a will, because I wanted them to, and because it was the only way to get home. After a good deal of hard work, a raft was completed, tied with the aforesaid material. Luckily, the fashion of those days provided every woman with a long chemise. I don't know how to say that word, that hung down to her ankles and covered her much more as to her neck and arms than many a fashionable belle of these times is covered by what people are pleased to call full dress. You may be sure such a raft was a very frail affair to sail the waters of the great St. Clair River, and Sally said that she knew we would be drowned. It was only large enough for two, and Margaret and I went, leaving Sally to take care of the boy. It required a brave heart either to go or stay, for in the distance we could hear the occasional howl of a wolf, and on the water was a little raft that looked as if it might fall to pieces at a moment's notice. The plan was that Margaret and I should stand up and pull the raft, but as soon as we got away from the shore, Margaret was afraid to stand up, so she sat down and cried, and I did the work. The current helped us a good deal, and after a time we could see the head of the island. We knew there was an encampment of friendly Indians there at that time, fishing and hunting, but we were not afraid of them. By this time the full moon was up, and as soon as we could see the island, we saw all the Indians down at the shore, gazing eagerly in our direction. They didn't seem to understand what it was that was coming towards them, but as we got nearer and nearer and the bright moonlight shone directly on us, and they discovered it was only two forlorn girls on a crazy raft, they screamed and shouted with laughter. I didn't care for that, for by this time I could see our boat that had stranded about where I thought she would. The Indians were very kind to us. The men went and got the boat and untied the raft, and the women wrung out the clothes and took us to a wigwam and helped us put ours on. Then they assisted us into the boat and put the rest of the wet clothes in, and with many friendly grunts and exclamations, they pushed our boat out into the stream, and we hastened back to Sally and the boy. Here I will say that I have never yet seen an Indian treated with kindness, but what he returned it by equal kindness, and he never forgets a favor, as I know from experience. Sally and the boy were rejoiced when we got back, and they dried the tears that had been plentiful flowing, put on their wet clothes, and we started for home. We agreed amongst ourselves that we would slip into the house the back way, change our clothes, and not tell anyone of our adventure, and so no one knew it for some time. But Margaret had a beau to whom she told the story after a while, and it was such a good story that, man-like, he told it to someone else, and so everyone knew it in a little time, and we were well laughed at. I don't see anything so very funny about it, said Goldenhair. Well, said Grandma, I related that story a good many years ago, to Mr. Stanley, famous for his pictures of Indians. We were passing the island on a steamer of your uncle's, and I was telling him something of the early days of St. Clair River settlements. He remarked that the incident would make a pretty picture. Not long after that, he brought me, on my 60th birthday, that picture, said Grandma, pointing to one that hung in the room. Here the children all wanted to look at it, though they had seen it 100 times, and pointed out to each other with great glee Grandma on the raft, the Indians, and other objects of interest, while Grandma herself escaped to her writing table. Goodbye, Bobs. Goodbye.